Welcome to Rick Rack Ruby. I'm Laura Cluvo. Today we are starting a new playlist called Flea Market Christmas. We're not going to the flea market, but we are featuring the flea market fabrics from Moda, designed by Cathe Holden. As far as I can tell, there are 3 collections: Flea Market Mix, Flea Market Moxie, and Flea Market Fresh. I've purchased some of the fabrics from each of those collections. I was trying to pull the reds and the greens and the neutrals and the things that would work for Christmas. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun. The first design is this Santa Claus ornament. You can see his beard is rickrack. This is an all-over postage stamp print. And then we have some kooky vintage trim, and he's really a lot of fun to make. So let's get started. So this is sort of a postage stamp print, and this was my favorite choice to make a Santa Claus. So I looked at it and I determined that if I went 4 across and 4 down, that was a good size rectangle for a Santa. It's 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. So I cut a 3 1/4 by 4 1/2 rectangle from graph paper, folded in half, and cut out this body shape. I will describe the pattern more completely later on in the video, so please stay tuned for that. But if you want a brief description, I just cut that out, folded it in half, and then cut sort of a rounded shape that seemed like it would work. And then I didn't cut this from the fabric, I cut it from interfacing. This is a fusible interfacing, but you can use regular interfacing. You'll just have to sew it to the back of the fabric instead of fusing. So I will take this over to my ironing board. This is a fat quarter. Let's see if it'll fit here. Oof, so close. I think that might work. Anyway, so what I'm going to try to do is iron it onto the back of the fabric, and I'm going to try to line up the center, along one of these where the perforations are, because that's where I'm going to place my trim, and that'll be nice to have that right in the center. So if it's 4 across, I'm going to line it up like this on the back. And I'll iron this to the back, and I will return in a second. Here's my Santa body front and back. This is the iron-on interfacing on the back. And I don't want a pink Santa or a rose-colored Santa. I want a red Santa. So I wanted to add some red. And since this is a flea market project, we're not going to use anything too precious. We're not going to use our favorite vintage laces, but we're going to use products that maybe could have been found at the flea market. There's this red and white sort of rickracky trim with a little gold thread going through, and I just thought that would be, it gives it more of a flea market-y appeal. So I'm going to place this right along the center line and cut it here, and then put a second piece across here. So I'll sew this one down first, and then this one over it. I'm going to use a zigzag just, to add to the sort of naive quality. And I will stitch this down and then stitch this across, and I will return in a moment. And there's the trim. I like the way that looks. So I'm going to place this face down and trim around it, and then stitch around the edge with a tiny, less than 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving the top edge open, and then I'll be back. I cut it pretty close. I don't think it really needs notches, but I'll make a few. And then I'll turn it to the right side through the opening in the top. That looks good. Those corners, they're not really corners, they're sort of rounded corners, but they look good, nice and smooth. Now I'm going to stuff it with fiberfill. That looks good. I've stuffed this pretty much to the top. I can still tuck it in because I have to gather up that neck edge. So I'd say within 1/4 of an inch of the very top. And I like to check and make sure that the edges are smooth, and they're pretty smooth. That looks pretty good. So this is a doubled strand of heavyweight thread. I have a knot in the end, and I'm going to gather up this top edge, securing my thread on the inside and right in that seam allowance, so the knot has something to grab onto. And then I'm just going to do a running stitch all the way around, about 1/4 of an inch down from the bottom. I like to use a thimble. Now I'm back to the place where I started, and I'm going to tuck those seam allowances in and pull this together. That looks good. Great. And then I'll secure my thread. And there we go. I have a video describing how to make my Santa face. This one is a bead. So this is not the type we want. And this has the nice little white eyebrows. And this one is the knob. So it's flat on the bottom and then it's round. And I drew the eyebrows on with a little marker. You can do whatever you like. I'm going to apply some hot glue right here, and then I'm going to press it onto the top. That looks good. The hat is next. We're only going to cut one piece for the hat. The hat is 3.5 across and 4 inches tall. And I just cut a rectangle and folded it and cut it off to a peak like this. And I will describe it more carefully later on in this video. So we only need one piece of fabric. You can use the same fabric or you could use something else. I'm going to use the same fabric. And again, I'm going to line it up. This goes across 5 stamps. So I'm going to try to, line up the center right along the center of that middle stamp. There's the hat. Now, before I sew it up, I'm going to fold up 1/4 of an inch along the bottom. Then I'm going to apply some trim right along that bottom edge. Oh, that's just about long enough. Okay, that worked out. And then I'll be back. There's the hat with the trim sewed on. You see, you can see that I have folded up 1/4 of an inch and then applied the trim with a zigzag. And now I'm going to fold it in half and pin and seam up that curved edge. Now I'm going to turn this right side out. I will use a needle to pull out the point of the hat. Then at the tip of the hat, I considered a lot of things, like maybe a pom-pom, or I have these little sort of baubles. I don't even know what they're called, but I think these, okay. I have these things, but they were too big. Seemed like a good idea, but they're too big. So I decided on a jingle bell. Easy. This is just a modern jingle bell you can buy at the craft store. So I have my same thread and it's doubled. I'm going to start from the inside and secure the knot right there, and then just sew through the loop on the bell. Could do it once or twice. And then I'll secure my thread. I like to secure it in the seam here, the back seam. And there's the completed hat. There's no stuffing in the hat. It's going to be glued to the top of his head. It fits just perfectly. And I like to make sure that it's tilted back enough that the face will show. So I don't want to pull it like this. I want it to be tilted back a little bit. And then in the back, that seam is all the way down to the base of his neck. It's all the way down. So about like that. It's just going to be glued. So when I have it the way that I like it, I'm going to just apply some glue to the inside, but not too close to the edge, because I don't want the glue to overflow. I always do the back first. I don't know why. I think that kind of like secures it. I tend to use more glue in the back and then a smudge here, and then I'm going to pull that hat down on the smudge. Sometimes I might want to add some to the sides, but I know the beard is going to come around and it's going to be also glued on, and it will really secure everything. So we have the body, the head, and the hat. Now it's time for the beard. Our little Santa looks pretty cute already, but we're going to give him a beard. I saw these index cards at Walmart, and they're heavy duty, so they're thicker than regular index cards, and they're really great for this purpose. They really hold up to the wrapping. I'm going to make the beard out of mini rickrack. I was very fortunate to discover an entire spool of white mini rickrack once upon a time, and I think it was maybe like at an antique fair or something like that. And so maybe it was at a flea market. So I tend to be really generous with the rickrack since I have so much, but in reality, it requires about 5 yards to wrap the card. So I'm just going to wrap the card from one end to the other, trying to keep it flat and untwisted. It just goes through the machine better if you can keep it flat. And I'm going to wrap it from one end to the other, and then I'm going to stitch down the center like this. My card is wrapped, and I just want to say that of course you can use yarn if you like, but I just like the whimsy of the rickrack. So now I'm going to stitch down and back. Here we go. You might think this is a lot of, like a long length of rickrack or yarn or whatever you're using, but this is actually for the beard and the mustache, and you really need pretty much all of this. So now I'm kind of folding the card back and forth, and then I'm going to pull it out, tear it and pull it out on the perforations. I'm going to start by adding some hot glue right here. I'm going to put it low. I want it to be low beneath the cheeks so that I can really see the face. I don't want to obscure the face. So it's way down, almost to his chin, like this. And that allows room for the mustache. Then we're going to glue it all the way around the back. It's going to go right over the hat. That's fine. It's fine and it's cute. That looks good. And like I say, we do have extra. A little more glue. That looks good. And then I'm going to add some more glue right on the stitches and then press that top layer of loops down into that glue. So there's the start. That's good. And I'll do a little bit in the front. That's good. And then I kind of like it when it flips out on the side, so I don't do as much on the side. Now I have this extra bit for the mustache. This is too much for the mustache. You only need maybe like 3 loops on each side. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to cut it right here. Then I'm going to take a length of this heavy-duty thread and sort of tie it off in the center with this thread. You can use a needle and kind of stitch through it if you like, but this works just fine. Wrap it a few times and tie it in a knot. Now there's the mustache, and I'm just going to glue that right to the face below the nose like this. A little bit of hot glue, just like that. I'm going to put a little bit of glue right here and then press this into the side. I want to be able to see the end of the hat in the front of the project, so I don't want to put it too far back so that the bell disappears. There's my glue, and I'm going to press that in. This has to be very secure. I'm going to make sure that's really going to hold that hat. And then finally, I have some gold and white baker's twine, which I'm going to use to sew through a hanging loop. Easy. And there we go. The Flea Market Santa ornament is done. He looks really cute. Now, as promised, I will describe these patterns for you. The hat pattern is 4 inches tall and 3.5 inches wide. I cut a rectangle 4 inches tall and 3.5 inches wide, and then I folded it in half and I just cut this rounded pointy shape for the hat. And you only need to cut one. This gets seamed together and then the seam goes in the back. That's the hat pattern. And then for the body, now this is just cut from the inner facing. It can be fusible or non-fusible. It is 4.5 inches tall and 3.25 inches wide. And again, I cut a rectangle. And then, here I'll show you. I just sort of rounded it up, and be sure that the top folded edge is at least 3/4 of an inch across, so that when you open it, it's 1.5. And that way, even after you sew it, there's enough room to reach in and stuff. That's the pattern for the Flea Market Santa ornament. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.